The Lee Group will be holding its 11th annual Small Business Workshop May 14th at 8 a.m. at the Corner Ballpark located at 1680 Michigan Avenue in Detroit. This year's theme is Thriving Through Uncertainty. Come and join the conversation as business leaders from across Detroit will be addressing this critical issue. This is a free event, and for more information, please go to leadgroupinnovation.com. That's leadgroupinnovation.com and click on the Small Business Workshop tab. All right, and welcome to this edition of In the Conference Room with Marquez Lee. As you know, this is your source of information across the great city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, as well as across the country. And we've been doing conference room for quite a while. You know, it's been on radio, now social media platforms, it's all over. You can still check me out my other traditional media outlets as well here in Detroit. But I want to thank you each and every single week for joining me in the conference room. And today is no exception. We have a very special guest. And I am so happy to welcome the chairman and CEO, Chairman Kenneth Kelly, First Independence Bank, which is headquartered here in Detroit. He's doing some phenomenal things. We got a plethora of topics we're going to be covering today. Chairman Kelly, thanks for joining me in the conference room. How you doing?
Doing great, Mark. Thanks for being here and allowing us to come and share the news of the things that we're doing and really engaging in the community, which is what we're really all about.
Absolutely. First Independence Bank has been around 55 years. We're going to unpack that a little bit further. It's a big year for them. He's going to share with us some of the activities, the history of the bank as well. In fact, start right there. Let's start with the history of First Independence Bank for those who are tuning in from across the country, not here in Detroit, but kind of give a brief overview of the bank's history.
Yeah, high level, I'm a pretty strong context guy and really believe understanding your history can help you make wise decisions today and really prepare for the future. And you think about it, you really have to go back to the incipients of First Independence Bank, which was really the riots of 1967. And the positive outcome of that was a group of leaders, over 20 individuals, said we needed to create an institution where we could bank. And those 20 individuals worked on that for 2.5 years and were able to give birth to First Independence Bank on May 14th, 1970. And so we're so grateful for their leadership, their fortitude, and their service, which created this institution, again, as a positive outcome coming out of the 1967 riots.
Well, and let's take it a step. Let's just take the conversation from there. So that's 55 years, the 55th anniversary of the bank. Talk to us about the 55th anniversary in terms of looking back. You know, what's evolved and what's changed over that 55-year period, and what are some of the challenges that were then? Are they still the same as they are today?
I think you're seeing, let's call it deja vu, or history repeats itself. If you can imagine, this institution was born out of the birth of the civil rights movement in the early 1954 through about the late 1960s. And this is one of the positive outcomes. And if you look at what's happening in our country now and the discussion, the topics that are taking place, very similar and a little bit eerie in many ways, Mark. And the reality is, when you think about capital, you know, money in a capitalistic society, it is the oxygen. And you need to see that in places that are important to your neighborhood and your community. And so when you think about where we've been and where we're going, it's really a pure reflection of looking at a little bit of deja vu, but also emphasizing the importance of understanding how can we leverage capital to help improve the communities that we serve on a daily basis.
And let's fast forward to today. And there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the economy, in terms of policy. This is, as you know, this is not a political show at all, but we're simply talking about the political wins in terms of what's coming out of Washington, D.C. For example, what I'm going to focus on more so is the uncertainty in the economy from a business perspective. And as businesses are looking to see the increase in cost, for example, other challenges coming out of DC in terms of policy making. Talk about your perspective on how businesses should begin to address some of the challenges, some of the uncertainties, some of the trade winds that are currently out there.
I tell you, as leaders, the first thing that I would say is, one, just remain as calm as possible. There are some things we can control and some that we can't. But in paying attention and after you create the calmness that's around you, be sure to just make note of those things that are important to your individual business. So if there's a company that's working across borders, their sensitivity is a lot different than one that's working just domestically. But the reality is there's certainly a lot of uncertainty at this point in time, and we're just going to have to really kind of watch it on a day-by-day basis. I can tell you, I sit in a room with leaders throughout Metro Detroit, but also really across the country now. And I think there's a running theme that there is certainly uncertainty associated with many of the political policies that are being implemented. I can tell you, and had the fortune of sitting with the Secretary of Treasury, and I would tell you, I found him to be very reasonable and thoughtful, and it appears that his voice is certainly leading a lot of credibility to the things in the way that they're moving. I was impressed by sitting and listening with him, and I understand he's having to manage through the issues that's happening there in Washington, D.C., but I found him to be a very reasonable person. And so I say all of that to say to the business leaders that may be listening, and even the community leaders, that I think creating a sense of calm is important for those that you have your circle of influence around, and we'll have to just try to manage through this. This is very atypical, what we're seeing and dealing with, and that's just the reality of it, and that's not a political statement, it's just the reality. But what I would suggest is we all have to, as leaders, remain calm and try to keep those around us calm so we don't make irrational decisions in the midst of the uncertainty.
I love what you're saying, the full disclosure as well. First Independence Bank is a sponsor of the 11th annual Small Business Workshop that's being held here in Detroit. And this year's theme, Chairman, is just that, thriving through uncertainty, thriving through uncertainty. And one of the things I'm very proud of is we're going to be having a fireside chat with First Independence Bank and talking about its history. And to your point where you just referenced, how should businesses deal with this from a business perspective, the uncertainty that's out there? And I think you've done a nice way of segueing into that conversation. Let's talk about a designation, the MDI, and talk about the acronym, the MDI. Exactly what does that mean, and why is that important for those tuning in?
Well, we know we're facing some interesting times with the anti-DE&I movement and the slang that comes along with that. But the reality is, when you look at the banking sector, there are a little bit over 4,500 banks in the United States of America. About 150 of those are MDIs. That's a minority depository institution. Roughly 70 of those are Asian owned. About less than 40 are Hispanic, and right at about 20 that are African American owned and controlled, and about 20 that are Native American owned and controlled. So that designation just acknowledged one of two things. One, that business or that bank has more than 51% ownership of that specific ethnicity, whether it's Asian, Hispanic, African American, or Native American. Or number two, if it is not economically controlled by 51%, that the board of directors is 51% or greater of that ethnicity. So in all cases, it may not be that it is minority owned, it could be minority controlled by the board. And the reality is these banks and institutions have been created to really look at trying to meet the needs of the communities that they serve. Now, just to be clear, I will say to you that we may be African American owned and controlled, but we're not African American only. So we may be Black owned, but not Black only, meaning we have customers from across the board when you look at ethnicities, and that's even from the majority perspective. So I want to be real clear about that. But our intent and affinity have certainly been looking at the minority community and being sure that it has access to capital so that it can grow and flourish just as any other ethnicity in the great United States of America.
So let's think, I'm going to unpack a little bit further. We talked about the uncertainty moments ago. Talk to me in terms of the MDIs, for example. How are they feeling out there in today's economic environment, in today's overall environment? Is there a sense of calm? Is there a sense of nervousness? Kind of talk us through what they're feeling right now.
I think when you look at the statements, there's certainly nervousness that comes with that. But the reality is there's a calmness that has to be there to persevere in the midst of that. I think our ancestry and our history shows that we've been able to really navigate these winds as we're seeing them today. And so I would tell you that, the reality of the adages are still very true. When
Mhm.
America catches a cold, we catch the flu. That's still true, and I think we all understand what that metaphor means. And so our intent is to really try to be stable and to continue to provide the services that will impact the community that we care about, in trying to serve all, to be candid with you. But what I would say, again, in looking at where we are directly to your question, there's a bit of nervousness that comes along with that in the midst of kind of this anti-DE&I discussion. But the reality is we just want to be really good at what we do from a banking perspective and be able to serve the customers that we care about across that spectrum, and ensuring that they have access to capital in the midst of whatever the economic times are.
And so, as we think about, you start referencing the community, if you will, and the importance of this particular bank, First Independence Bank, MBIs, to the community. Expound on that, because I know that there's certainly a major presence there at 7 Mile in Illinois and other parts across the city. You've expanded into Minneapolis, into the Minnesota market as well. Um, Talk about the importance of a First Independence within the community. Why, why should people continue to look at First Independence? What kind of levels of service are they going to be getting in terms of the products and services? Talk about that importance to the community as well.
Yeah, I'm going to invoke someone that you and I know and cherish and honor as a great brother, Brother O'Neill Swanson.
Yeah.
So he was one of the founding directors of First Independence Bank back in 1970. And as you know, we lost him in the midst of COVID. But just prior to losing him in March of 2020, he had a chance to sit and share with our next generation board in that January of 2020. And one of the things he said just really just stuck with me. He talked about the importance of opening this bank and what it meant, and how people brought money in bags just to open an account because they
Mm,
didn't have access to typical banking. But in addition to that, the thing that he shared that was so piercing, Mark, was that not only opening First Independence and its meaning to the community, but it also changed the dynamics of banking for African Americans who were in the workforce across the banking sector. He shared that prior to First Independence opening, most African Americans either worked in janitorial services or some custodial services or some form of being a teller at the bank. But after First Independence opened, he saw that there was a migration for African Americans being considered for other forms of employment at those institutions. And I would
hmm
tell you, for me, it just showed the intangible impact of an institution like ours and its presence and what it means to be in, the marketplace, and how it can change the dynamics just by being open and what it was intended to do in serving the community. And so I like to share that story only because it really gets to the depth of why we were founded, but also
Yeah.
to demonstrate the intangible impact of our presence, not only inside of the bank and the community, but really across the metro area.
And just to clarify for those of you tuning in, Odell Swanson, you heard said Brother Odell Swanson was a legendary business person here in Detroit and happened to be a member of the same fraternity, full disclosure, of Alpha Phi Alpha Phi of all the Divine Nine. I want to say that. I want to make sure we're clear on that. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Chairman Kenneth Kelly is a member, and the late great O'Neill Swanson was a member, now the Omega chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I want to segue again over into another area, which is the American Bankers Association. And you were just elected the chairperson, I believe. Is that right?
I'm chair-elect as of last
Chair-elect.
October,
Okay.
and I will
Well,
become chair this upcoming October.
congratulations as the chair-elect. Talk about the organization. What is its primary mission? And then as the incoming chair, as the chair-elect, what do you like to see direction to look for the organization moving forward?
Certainly. So the American Bankers Association has been around, ironically, for 150 years. We'll be celebrating that anniversary coming up in July. Back in 1875, bankers from 35 states, if I recall correctly, wanted to look at a way of galvanizing and being sure that their issues were being heard. And so that created the formation of the American Bankers Association. And ironically, they got the idea from the women's suffrage movement, which
Mm,
really had gone on prior to that and didn't really get, let's call it, momentum until the early 1920s. But long story short, that was the intent of the American Bankers Association. And so we're so fortunate to be able to sit in the chair and serve. I think I'll be the first African American to serve in the office of chair-elect and now becoming the chair and across 150 years. And so there's a lot of responsibility, as you can imagine, Mark, that comes with that.
Mhm.
We represent all $23 trillion in assets across all of the banking sector here in the United States of America. And most importantly, want to be sure that banks have a fair chance at regulation and be able to serve the customers that they care about in all respective markets. So it certainly is a tribute to First Independence Bank and thinking about our history and how we were making a difference in the late 1960s and to 1970. And today to have the chairman and CEO of that role to sit in the seat of the American Bankers Association is one of those I would say probably was not in the wildest dreams of our ancestors, but because
Yeah.
they did the work and laid the service and had the courage and created the foundation, we're able to sit in that seat. So we're very grateful for that.
Well, I think that's a distinct honor for you. That's history, it's historical. And have a Detroit-based bank needed, if you will. That's awesome in terms of becoming the chair. And in case you're just joining us, we're talking to Chairman Kenneth Kelly. He's the chairman of First Independence Bank, which is headquartered here in Detroit, their 55th year, doing some outstanding things and across the city. And what I want to talk about is the growth of the bank under your leadership. Obviously, for those of us in Detroit, we know of First Independence here, but there's been tremendous growth under your leadership. Talk about that growth under your leadership as the chairman of the organization.
Yeah, I would tell you again, solid foundation left by the original founders, a solid foundation left by our legendary owner, Don Davis and
Yeah.
Kiko Davis, and what they've done in creating a family legacy here. And we've been able to be a small part of that growth. I would tell you, Mark, we have gone from being a little bit over 200 million in assets to now well over 600 million, and that's significant growth in the banking sector. And so to put it in perspective, as I talked about the institutions, there are about 4,500 banks in the country. We were probably right at about the 3,000 mark when you look at the size of the bank. Now we're inside of the top 1,500 banks. We're about 1,485. So that's significant growth if you're looking at moving from kind of the bottom. Actually, at that 3,000 mark, there were probably closer to 5,500 banks at that point in time. So we're seeing consolidation take place in the industry, but not only consolidation, but also growth. And so we're proud of the movement that we've been able to make and hopefully make that sustainable and making it a stronger institution going forward.
And you've expanded to the Twin Cities, you expanded to the Minnesota market. How has that expansion gone for you? And if you want to tip the hand even further, any plans in the future to expand beyond the Twin Cities as well?
Well, if I was a poker player, I wouldn't tip my hand, right? But the reality is, thanks for asking that question, Mark. I would tell you that, as in most things, the banking business is really about trust and reputation. And so the irony is that after George Floyd happened in 2020, I got a call by some business partners wanting to get my counsel on things that could be done there very quietly and confidentially inside of the Twin Cities as it related to race relations. And so from those discussions, it was realized that there was not a minority bank there, and those large institutions, Bremer Bank, Bank of America, at that time, TCF/Huntington, Wells Fargo, and US Bank, some of those I already had partnerships with. But the reality is, from that discussion, they became the Fab Five. They named themselves that because we're from Michigan. And then as the story goes, we ended up looking at the opportunity to have an expansion in that marketplace in 2022. We were able to, with their support, apply for regulatory approval and were able to move forward with that move into the Twin Cities. So we have two Twin Cities. So we have two offices that are located there. From my perspective, it has gone very well. As you can imagine, like most business people, the way you write it on paper doesn't always pan out to the exact plan. But I would tell you, if we had the opportunity to do it all over again, we would. We have good leadership there. We basically leverage our infrastructure to allow leadership in that marketplace to really grow and develop a banking institution that is minority owned and controlled. And that was very intentional. very intentional. We were not trying to move into Minneapolis. We wanted to leverage our resources to allow individuals in that marketplace to be able to grow and have a seat at the table from a financial perspective. And I would tell you that has been extremely successful from that perspective.
As we begin to wrap up, I also want to talk briefly about new products and services that you may be introducing that people should become aware of. Are there any new programs that you'd like to reference, or again, products, services, and programs that people should become aware?
Yeah, I would tell you this is going to sound probably not the way that I intend for it to come out, but it is a reality. We have money to lend. In fact, we have too much money to lend is the way that I would sum it up. We've got programming now that is specific to helping institutions or helping individuals buy small companies. We've created a new program specifically for that, working with the state and MEDC and creating a guaranteed type program that will allow individuals to come in and buy small businesses. And so my point to you, or the point that I would like to convey, like most banks, we have money to lend, but certainly we have to be very cautious in how we do that because we're a regulatory entity. But the reality is that was the intent of First Independence, to create financial pathways and opportunities for those who may not have had the same level of access to capital. That's what sits in the back of my mind on a daily basis when our team open the doors and to try to create opportunities. And so that's just one product that I would tell you about that I know that we would like to really be a lot more successful in that, because that means that there are more entrepreneurs getting access to capital, buying businesses that will allow them to grow and sustain their families in the circles of influence that they would like to have an impact with.
That's great to hear, because we always know that surveys been done for years that the number one issue for all businesses, and particularly minority businesses, access to capital. Access to capital always rises to the top. And so we have here Chairman Kelly from First Independence Bank is basically saying there's some money's out there. And certainly they have to be judicious with it in terms of identifying the strategies to make sure that the proper guardrails are in place. But go to First Independence Bank and check it out. I would like to give you the final word. Anything that you'd like to say in the final 30 seconds to a minute, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to the employees of First Independence Bank. They are there doing it every day, being sure the doors are open and being sure that they are there to serve our customers. And I'd also like to say thank you to those customers who have been supportive of us. Many have done that through our trials of ups and downs that you see and experience in any business. And I just like to say thank you to them, because that allows us to continue to really move forward with the mission and help to create and live out the vision of our ancestors and trying to be sure that we all have equitable access to capital.
Chairman Kenneth Kelly, I want to thank you very much. I know you're busy. I always enjoy talking to you. I love highlighting First Independence Bank, everything that you're doing. And again, from the League Group's perspective, we want to thank First Independence Bank for being a sponsor as well for the 11th annual Small Business Workshop. We look forward to the conversations with your team next week. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mark. We appreciate your leadership in the space that you play in and helping ensure that voices like ours get to move into the community space, and just want to tell you thank you for your leadership.
Absolutely, my pleasure. For all of you, thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of In the Conference with Mark Esley. I want you to go out and make it a great day and make it a great week. And don't forget to subscribe to the Conference Room YouTube channel as well. We're over all the social media platforms as well. But go out and make it a great day, make it a great week. We will check you out next time in the Conference Room with Mark Esley. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. The Lee Group will be holding its 11th annual Small Business Workshop May 14th at 8 a.m. at the Corner Ballpark, located at 1680 Michigan Avenue in Detroit. This year's theme is Thriving Through Uncertainty. Come and join the conversation as business leaders from across Detroit will be addressing this critical issue. This is a free event, and for more information, please go to leadgroupinnovation.com. That's leadgroupinnovation.com and click on the Small Business Workshop tab.